Hello and welcome to GameGuru Classic and GameGuru Max broadcast number 136. I apologise for the delay and I just want to make sure that everyone can hear me before we move on to this week's broadcast. As always, I have a secret live chat window that you can't see yet at the moment, but you will soon enough. And if everyone can just say yes, Lee, we can hear you. I know it's an old thing, we used to do this back in the sub 100 broadcast days just to make sure that I can be heard. Thank you, Requiem. You can hear me. That's wonderful. Great. Wonderful. Let's move on. The format of this broadcast pretty straightforward. If you're joining us live, you get to ask some questions, and in the second part of the broadcast, I get to answer them. I think last week we managed to answer every single question, or at least the one I could find. I think one person who attended live, none of his questions even showed up in the live chat. So whether I skip them subconsciously or not, the golden rule is stick a question mark at the end of the question. Stick a little question mark symbol at the end of it, because that's what I'm looking for when I skim through the live chat and looking for those questions. So that's a little bit of a pre-advice for the second part, but start asking your questions now. We'll rattle through them in the second part. The first part, of course, as always, is we get to do a little demo. And GameGuru's universe is split in half. We have GameGuru Classic and we have GameGuru Max. And anything that develops, anything we've developed, we get to talk about during these sessions. Alas, in GameGuru Classic, there's not much going on in the repository right now. And in the last two broadcasts, I just didn't want to say there's nothing to talk about. So I had a bit of a scout around and I found this. 70% off. If you scroll down on Fantasy Bundle, and if I click on package info, you can see we now have 70% off this, which of course is the GameGuru base product, which normally retails at 15. Sounds like Del Boy, doesn't it? $14.99, and of course the Fantasy Pack, and we throw in Mega Pack 2 as well. We call it the Fantasy Bundle, and it's currently available for 70% off. So if you are a sort of casual watcher of the broadcasts and you're deciding to take the plunge, this could be a good deal for you with 70% off. And that concludes the entirety of the GameGuru Classic news. Okay, what everyone tuned in for, which of course is GameGuru Max news. And if you recall, last time I teased that I might be able to show you the next stage in the RPG role-playing game mechanics, which of course we are currently working on. We're looking to complete that along with VR in the next couple of weeks. And I hinted that it would be about the hotkeys. And of course that's exactly what has been created and what I'm going to demonstrate to you right now. I've preloaded the software and I've opened it up onto the game storyboard, which is the first sort of section that you'll see when you create a new game project, as it holds all the different screens for the game that you're making. And for the most part, your game consists of your game, maybe with a title menu and a splash screen. Well, RPG requires a lot more screens than that. Specifically things like inventory, shopping, crafting, map view, etc. And in fact, if you look at my screen right now, you'll see I've got little placeholders for player skills, crafting, shops, etc. and all that kind of stuff. And we've been working on this one. In fact, before I show you that, let me just show you this one. This is what most games have to have. It's the in-game HUD. It's the 2D elements that you get in every game kind of show you your status. Typical things may include your health and other attributes. If you've got armor, and in terms of RPG, you've got stamina, maybe a objectives radar to show you where you need to go next, those sorts of things. I do want to call your attention though to this tiny little bar down here. You can read the properties on the right, but all the things will become clear a little bit later, but this bar is super important. And anyone who knows what I'm going to talk about next kind of already figured out what that is. Now, this in-game HUD, this is available all the time. So as you're in the game, most of the time you've got your in-game HUD elements and they're always on the screen at the same time as each other. And that's what this is. However, this one, the inventory screen, that only shows up when you press the I key. You can reconfigure it with the change the toggle key up here. But typically, certainly in my test, you press I, brings up the inventory, and we've updated the inventory screen a little bit. And the bit I want to show you this week is this one. This is what we call the hotkeys panel. So what is the hotkeys panel? Before I talk about the hotkeys panel, I want to talk more generally about inventories, more specifically containers. In the product from a week ago, 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, it was not hard coded, but it was the first iteration of coding inventory, and I called it player inventory. And I suddenly realized, well, kind of knew this, but now I formalized it in code. There's no such thing as player inventory, player container. It's just a container, and it just happens to be that the player owns the container. But there's no reason why a shopkeeper can't own the container. Another character in the game has a container. A treasure chest in the middle of a cave has a container, and the container, of course, contains things like items. And so the code was reformed in order to treat containers as generic, and the player now has two out-of-the-box standard containers. The main inventory, where normally when you run around and collect things, it goes in your main inventory, and the hotkeys panel. The hotkeys panel is like a secondary inventory, but it's one that has a special superpower, and that special superpower is that you can press a key on your keyboard and it will, in quotes, use one of the slots inside that inventory container. It's rather special purpose, and maybe if I demonstrate it in game, you'll kind of know what I'm talking about. So I think probably a good idea is if we do that. So I'm going to run the game. This is all set up. This is my little RPG test level. I keep changing it every now and again just to move objects around as required. I broke through the wall. Just to give myself a bit more breathing room. There may be more, in fact I probably will need to have quite a large map, certainly when I do map view. So I just broke through my tiny little wall, and you can almost see that, you know, we're still working on this one, which of course is if you collect potions you can consume them, but if you collect a weapon you can't eat a hammer. But you'd certainly want to keep it in your inventory and move it around, and maybe you collect 3 different kinds of hammers and you want to sort of throw away the bad ones or the broken ones and keep the good one, but you get the idea. But let me start off just by collecting stamina, and I'll run over here away from all the collectibles and press the I key, and you can see if I click on this, you've got herbal stamina, a vial of stamina with a weight of 15, and you kind of get the idea. But this is what was implemented. If I take this and drag it down to here, you see I was able to select this and drag it and put it in there. I kind of mocked that up before, you may have seen that before, but now it's real. I've literally transferred the contents from the item from one container to another, and I can transfer it back again, just like that, and backwards and forwards. Now look what happens when I press the I key to get out of the inventory screen and back into the game. Look at the bottom right. It's a little tiny little vial. That shows you that I've now placed the vial in slot 1. So if I press the 1 key, what should happen to my stamina bar at the top? It's now 110. And you notice in the bottom right, the vial has been consumed, gone. I've eaten it. So if I go back to my little broken room and select this one, mana potion, you've now got mana potions. You see, herbal polish, a bottle of mana, weighs a bit more. And let's say I put that into, say, slot 5, like so. Leave inventory. You'll see that in our little bottom right, the hotkey is now in, the little portion is in the slot, 5th slot. Now, what's really cool about it is that hotkey panel is in 2 places. It's the big view in the inventory and the little squash view in the in-game. And all that really took was taking basically the same gadget and just squashing it and scaling it back a little bit. It's the same container. I can have that container or my main inventory or another container in any of my HUD screens, duplicated, but it's the same functionality. It's just you get to place them and orient them in different places. It gives you maximum flexibility in how you design your RPG screens. And most importantly for us, for today and right now, it works. So when I press the 5, is it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? I think so. Or is it 4? So it's 4. Yeah. Mana absorbed, and now I got a little bit of mana in the bottom left. and that's the hotkey system working as intended. As you saw when I pressed 1, see the hammer? That's the very next thing. I've been focusing on consumables, and so the next thing you're going to see is when I collect that sledgehammer, you'll actually see a sledgehammer available. That when you collect it, it will be available not in the main inventory, because if you think about it, for years in fact, we've had weapons immediately available in hotkeys. So you pick up a rifle or a pistol, all you do is press a number on your keyboard and it instantly pops up. We're just visualizing that logic, and so when you collect a weapon, the weapon will have a special flag which says go straight to hotspot, find an available slot, put it in the hotkeys panel, and you'll find it in that bottom bar. And all I need to do now, in fact the last bit, kind of just run out of time, is creating a little icon of all the different weapons. So when you do collect the sledgehammer, you'll notice it in that bottom bar. So when I press 1, just come out of the inventory for a sec. If I press 1, boom, you'll actually see a little sledgehammer here in this first slot. And then that completes the hotkeys panel. And once that's done, believe it or not, because I generictified, that's even a word, the main inventory and the hotkeys panel, the very same mechanism can be used for trading and to some degree crafting, but I'm going to focus on trading because the only difference between trading and what we've already got is that the player owns these 2 containers and a shopkeeper would own a third. And then it's really just a case of, in fact, let me just rerun the game because I've eaten all of my test objects. So often is the case. Yeah, so those are item that I can move to hot. And also, if there was, say, a shopkeeper's grid, this is all the stuff that shopkeeper is selling. It's just a case of taking it from the shop, dragging it into either your main inventory or a holding container. Sort of, these are the things in my shopping basket that I may want to buy, and the total tallies up, and then maybe you get to buy it all in one. Or you buy it one item at a time, so as soon as it tries to drop into the inventory panel, a bit of logic intercepts and says, oh, there's a price on that. You cannot transfer from shopkeeper to yours without an exchange taking place, etc. And that means with that last piece of mechanic in place, using the generic container logic that's already in place, you've now got trading and shopping. Crafting is like same sort of thing, but without the shopkeeper, but with the idea that multiple items can be squished together to produce one new item. That new item will already be pre-registered. It's not invented out of the blue. You'll already have created that item. It's just initially hidden in your game until multiple items conspire together and disappear in order to create that brand new item that then appears either in your inventory or in a crafting container. You get the idea. In fact, the only thing that isn't really using containers is the map view, which is this one, because that takes on a whole different set of challenges, like representing the entire terrain you've just created, mapping out all of the enemies, your current location, objectives, points of interest, anything else that we might want to see on the map. Nothing really to do with containers. So the containers are kind of ruling inventories, crafting and trading. Player skills we've kind of been doing in the background. It just hasn't deserved its own big screen. But when we finally do that screen, half the stuff's already present, like your armor and your stamina and other attributes that you build in your RPG game over time. That's just a way to visualize those variables. So I'd say once the container stuff is done, then it's player skills, then it's map views, and then we have a nice round bag of RPG gadgets for you to play with, and more importantly, to make RPG games out of. So that's what I wanted to show you today. I also wanted to leave some time for questions. I am aware that I've probably eaten 5 minutes in the procrastination stage of this broadcast, so I have probably been talking for 15 minutes, which I think is more than enough listening to me witter on. More important that your questions are answered in a timely fashion. Let's see if I can drag in the live chat, which I was successful in doing. Doesn't look too crazy, so I think maybe we can get at least all the initial questions answered. So we'll set aside 10 minutes for that and see how we get on. So the first question mark arrives about 10 lines down. This is from Casey. When you use my reading eyes, when you aim to the sun is overlay the gun. Please fix it, or let us know how to fix it. I don't think you can fix it. Well, you can fix it. If you go to the GitHub repository for GameGuru Max, which is the latest version, we always check in to the public repo, so that code is presently available. You are more than welcome to go in and try and fix that, what is very, very definitely a bug. My only question is, has it been reported on the issues board? I suspect it has. I do remember reading an issue about that. But that's all I know. Whether it's been fixed but not enough, or whether it was even in GameGuru Classic and not GameGuru Max, that's where the detail fails. So if you're already aware that it's on issues board, great. If you're not sure, best just to post it just to be safe. And when you do post an issue, make sure that not only does it come with some juicy screenshots, but a nice, super simple, step-by-step guide from launching the software from scratch, how to reproduce the bug. It's amazing how much time is spent just trying to reproduce a bug. Fixing it is relatively quickly. Trying to recreate it, that's usually what takes all of the coder's time. So just wanted to put that out there for those who don't know how to report bugs. The more evidence that we have to reproduce it, the quicker the fix is, and we can move on to the next 5 bugs. Jade Birdmax asks, yay, hello everyone, 07. Okay. Sorry, I thought your 07 was O question mark. So, like I said, I've got my reading eyes on today. And everyone can hear me loud and proud. Awesome. Let's find the question mark. And we found one. This is another one from Jaybird Max. ETA on GameGuru Max standalone game creation. Standalone game creation. From that, I'm going to read the question as when are we going to have export standalone. It's already available in the current early access version of GameGuru Max, so you can check that out now. The final version of exporting standalone games is when we release the final version 1 of GameGuru Max. So on the release of version 1, you'll also get the release of the final export standalone, which removes the splash screen, so you can start exporting your games. I rather suspect though that on version 1 there may be other things, tweaks, fixes, functional improvements you may still want, and you'll want those before you release your game into the world. Now, that's just a guess. But yeah, standalone export is already available and will be rounded off and perfected for version 1. Charlene asks, when do you think version 1 is approaching? Well, my gut feel is March, April time. So that's sort of your rough guide for the completion of RPG and version 1 of VR. That, together with all the other features that we've been working on during early access and before, that will represent GameGuru Max version 1. So don't worry, you don't have to wait another year. We are now rapidly getting to the point now where we're starting to finalise the documentation, getting rid of the bugs that we've hard won and collected over the last year, and of course the last few bits of features to go into GameGuru Max. So not long to wait now. Blood Moon asks, in the future will there be a way to easily collaborate with other developers built into GGM? Collaborate with other developers built it. We don't build developers into GameGuru Max. That would be inhumane, and I don't know how flesh and digital technology would blend very well together. As to reinterpret the question, multiple developers in a team working together with GameGuru Max. There isn't a built-in sort of multi-user experience. Everyone will have their own copy of GameGuru Max. My experience with teams, you delegate the disciplines. So one person's the artist, one's the designer, one's the coder, one's the tester, sound guy, project manager. You get the idea. Give everyone a discipline they're really good at and have them do that job. And that's how a team gels really well together. The idea of 3 or 4 people all working on the same level probably wouldn't work. If you are going to do that, give people different levels. So maybe you get the forest level, your teammate gets the desert level, third guy gets the underwater level, whatever it happens to be. Multiple people working on the same level, I think would only lead to confusion. In the future, maybe we get multi-user stuff going on, but right now we're busy enough to getting a version 1 that is stable and has less than 100 bugs. Okay, question. Here's a question mark. Another one from J Birdmax. I can't find the GameGuru manual. Could you please tell me where to find it, Lee? I don't know where the GameGuru manual is. I would suggest asking the GameGuru developers where the manual is, and they will be better placed to answer that question than I. Just for anyone who doesn't know, GameGuru is a rather cool DLC that lets you do cinematics, like, you know, story sections where you stop playing the game, you see a little sequence of some narrative, and then you get controls back and carry on playing the game. It's not like a video where you just play. GameGuru still uses real-time rendering, but stages it sequentially to create this lovely little story with people talking and text and camera shots and dollies. All very cool indeed. But we didn't write it. TGC did not write it. It's a third-party creation. So go check out those authors. Ask them where the manual is. Pretty sure there is one. Okay, question mark is another one from Charlene. When are we going to have non-character shapes for character entities? Non-character shapes? So when are we going to have non-character creation in the character creator? When are we getting the non-character creator? There's no plans to do a non-character creator in GameGuru Max at this stage. Just to broaden the question a little bit, if you're asking when can we stick, like, not body parts, but like just generic shapes and objects onto characters, I think that's close to the mark. That's something we're probably going to do first before we just throw the character away and start doing animal creator and monster creator. Does make sense, does it not, that we just have like extra appendage options in the character creator, so you can sort of replace the head with a great big mask, or glue something to the body, or glue something to the legs. You know, think knights, where you have the armour and all the different pieces attached to a body. That's probably stage 2 in the character creator's evolution. As to non-character stuff, that's probably never going to happen in the short to mid-term. You're probably going to see that from someone else who will just take our character creator as an idea and then go that next level and create dogs and other four-legged things and horses, etc. But we don't have any roadmap to doing a horse maker or non-character maker anytime soon. Dude from 1972 says, no, Lee, it is actually the number 4 slot as far as I can tell. You are right. But I guess I'm reading in the past now, and everyone knows that I did make that mistake and it wasn't before. You are absolutely right. Jonathan asks, hello, is it possible to create its own filter, LUT on GGM? The LUT files, for anyone who doesn't know, LUT is a file format that allows you to change the post-process final colorization of your scene, so you can make your game like look black and white, or noir, or all kinds of really cool filtery patterns. And the question is, can we create our own LUT files? Sure. All them LUT files that you saw, we didn't create. We got them from an open source, freely available library, and we just grabbed 30, but there's hundreds of the things out there. We just picked 30 that looked interesting enough to be different from each other. And I assume if there's hundreds out there, there is an easy way to create LUT files, but we're not experts at LUT file creation. I imagine a bit of Googling, you'd probably find a little tool that lets you create that. And all it is a remap of colour values. You know, you input red and it outputs whatever based on your LUT rules. So it shouldn't be too difficult to knock something up in that respect. Question from Felix. Will at some point be any way to modify within the editor weapons related things like shooting sound, hit effects, impact decals, rate of fire, or the amount of screen shake when shooting? You can actually change all of those things in what we call a gunspec.txt file. So you can actually modify those, but I think the question is within the editor. Is there some out of the box UI that lets you change all those things? There's no plans to create that. I think it's a great idea to have these phases where we can provide those properties for you to edit through the editor. then modify existing weapons, and of course the ultimate, creating your own weapons from scratch by dragging in models, giving them and infuse them with animations that are compatible with Max, and then applying all these attributes. But that's a very long road, and at the end of it we call it the weapon maker. But right now, yes, you can do it, but it's not UI and it's not out of the box. It's a gun spec file. Just go and look at Gunbank. Is it Gunbank? No, it's GameGuru. Look inside the GameGuru folder to begin your journey on how our weapons are put together. They are customizable. Artists are creating their own weapons. It's not a dark art, but it's not very much front-end UI. It's back-end. Create text files, create geometry and textures and animations to pull together all the bits that you need to make a final GameGuru Max weapon. Galen Black asks, I downloaded some paid for items from the Game Maker store. They were compatible with GGM. I downloaded them GGM, and now when I try to add anything to my GGM games, it closes GGM down. Any ideas? I don't know what the Game Maker store is. Maybe you mean the asset store. Game Creator Store is the official name of it. If you have problems with stuff you bought from a store, that isn't ours, and we don't have a store, by the way. Best to talk to the owner of the store and find out if there is a problem historically with those items and maybe get a refund. We don't have a store anymore, so we just use Steam, and you're quite welcome to complain at Steam. And the only thing in Steam that we have that could constitute a store-related item is our DLCs. And we do respond to issues that are reported on our DLCs quite quickly. But for items that you bought from some store somewhere, you're either going to have to talk to the administrator of that store and the author who created the items in that store. We have to draw the line. Now, if it's a genuine bug and an item exposed something that failed in GameGuru Max, then it's definitely our problem. In that case, post it on the issues board, provide evidence of the crash so we can reproduce it. We'll go off and buy the item from that store in order for us to reproduce it. That's fine. In fact, you shouldn't upload the item you bought onto the GitHub issue. That's piracy. But let us know where you got it from, what the name is, and we'll go out and we'll buy our own version of it to reproduce the bug. But it does sound like you've maybe come across a bug, especially if GameGuru Max is closing down when you try and do something. I don't think a store item should ever be able to do that. Okay, question mark. Another one from Blood Moon. In the future, will base building be potable, such as in survival style games? Yeah, please refer to last week's broadcast. We talked briefly about RTS, real-time strategy. Things like Warcraft, where you can, or Command and Conquer, where you can build bases and then build up your units and then charge across a map and attack somebody else's bases. That's not planned for GameGuru Max. We are not intending to do RTS strategy games in this game maker. So you may have to go elsewhere, find out who else has a game maker like that, or learn programming for a couple of years and write it yourself from scratch. It's not actually that difficult. I wrote a few RTS games myself, lots of fun. But GameGuru Max is not intending to support that very specific genre at this time. Jonathan asks, I imagine the question must have been asked more than once, but will it be possible with version 1 to be able to apply several behaviours in one element? Great question. And has been proffered, let's use that word, by more than one person. Because once you start getting into game logic, you very soon realise, wouldn't it be cool if... ... And one of the really cool if suggestions, can we load up one object with multiple behaviours? The reason being, these behaviours can then devolve into rather simple identities. So a behaviour that's really just dealing with sound, then added to another behaviour that's really just dealing with visuals, and then a third behaviour that's really just dealing with the interactions of the player or another character. Great idea, and it's probably a suggestion for the evolution of how game logic could be built in the future. But for right now, for GameGuru Max, it's basically one behaviour per object, we're going to fully explore the one behavior per object before we start looking at the absolute imperatives of having multiple behaviors per object. And there's another reason as well. We don't want to start recreating all of the complexity that you already have if you were to script from scratch or program your own game from scratch. GameGuru Max is supposed to free most people from that burden, so you can very quickly knock together some game levels and game logic and play a game without having to script every single line of logic. And when you start talking about multiple behaviors per object, you're going down that narrow road of lots of logic crammed and hidden inside a single object. And then you may as well just program, because at some level, and I've done this myself, going from a visual programming system to just a regular scripting system, at some point a visual logic system breaks down, and it's starting to be very difficult to understand the logic that you've done visually. And at that point, believe it or not, it's easier, and it's easier to read, to do it in script. So there's a point where visual systems will break down, and it's just better to go back to good old-fashioned programming until some whole new holistic system comes along. Just seen about 35 question marks from no content. Weapon importer, how? There are no plans to do a weapon importer in GameGuru Max. See previous. Answer Jade Bird Max, it's amazing. Thank you very much. Another one from Felix regarding the inventory system. Will it support different object sizes, like a potion taking 1 slot, another 4 slots, for example? Not in the version that I'm implementing for version 1. Simply because of all the other things that you saw earlier in the broadcast, which is map views, crafting, trading, and player skills, and of course the whole player progress and XP and experience points, and clicking all that together with some really nice logic and some assets to make it all work for you out of the box. All of them things are the important things. Having an object take up 4 slots instead of 1, I'd argue that's a secondary concern. That is not to say that won't be done. In fact, the way the inventory system has been created, I've decoupled the slot stuff from the back end. So if you wanted to, you could go in to version 1's lower script and have it so one object takes up 4 slots. It's pretty deep stuff. I mean, the script isn't just like 3 lines of code. There's a lot of code in there, but at least it's lower, and at least it's available to you, and it's not hard coded into C++ and a binary. So you can go in and then reimagine that front end inventory system if you want to, so it has 4 slots and 8 slots, etc. We just want to get all that base functionality at that back end first, so everything works, and then we'll have a play with one object that takes up half your inventory panel. Okay, another question mark straight below it from Matches Malone. Is there a way to reduce size of end-user exe games? Yes, use smaller media. What you usually find is the size of your executable is directly proportional to the amount of stuff you put in your game. And the stuff we put in our game is already compressed, you know. DDS files are highly compressed. WAV files are compressed. Image files, other image files, not DDS files, are compressed. A lot of compressed stuff going on. So yeah, it can get smaller with compression techniques. We encrypt the media, but we don't go to great pains to do that final encryption. That final compression, which could squeeze it down even more. But if you look at games these days, I think most modern developers have kind of abandoned the idea of having to squeeze everything down to 64K or less. The last couple of games I downloaded did 1620 gigabytes. So yeah, the days of the demo scene and squeezing everything onto the size of a floppy disk, I think it's less relevant to having high resolution textures and making your game look great on 4K stereoscopic monitors. But we are doing compression. It makes sense to do so because it's quicker to load the file in, and the computers are very good at decompressing on the fly. So they're not all full raw size files, they are compressed, but you can compress them a little more if you want to squeeze a bit more out of it. So checking the clock, we're at 39 minutes in. That's definitely quite a sizable broadcast. Let's pick 2 more questions and then I'm out of here. So the next one is from Jonathan Della. Sorry, is it Dahlia? Let's just say Jonathan. Are there any improvements or new features planned for the Meteor effect for version 1? There are currently no plans to add something called a Meteor effects version 1. I'm sorry if there was a bit of a typo, but I'm not familiar with Meteor or any variation on that theme. So just take the answer as no. There are no plans for improvements of the new feature Meteor effect in GameGuru Max. And I'm looking forward to finding out what that is myself when we release version 1. And the last question, Jaybird Max got it in there. The store ping is gone from the bottom of the asset list. The store ping is gone. As far as I'm concerned, the GameGuru Max does not have something called a store ping from the asset list. We have lots of asset lists. I'm not familiar with something we call an asset list. So unfortunately, the last question of the day, I've not been able to answer. But absolutely, please do email me afterwards, Jaybird Max, and I'll give you your answer. If you want to rephrase, that would be awesome. But I'm looking at the clock. We are definitely burning into this hour, and I really don't want to make 45 to 55-minute broadcasts. No one sticks around to the end. So I'll be here next Wednesday at 7 p.m. GMT. Thanks very much for your kind attention. I'll be bringing you more RPG mechanics progress next week. We'll probably finish the hotkeys, and I'll be moving on to player skills. And you should also be able to see me collect weapons and see those in the hotkeys panel as well. So until next Wednesday at 7 p.m. GMT, thanks for your kind attention, and I'll say goodbye.